Welcome to our Alumni Nutrition Talks series, a celebration of 40 years of training nutritional therapists. I'm Heather Rosa, the Dean, and I hope you enjoy this presentation.
Hello, welcome. My name is Nicola Moore. I'm a registered nutritional therapist, and I'm here today on behalf of the Institute for Optimum Nutrition to talk to you about the menopause, food, and how it affects you and your health. Before we get into this topic, which is massive and really, really exciting, I just want to share a little bit about me and my work first, and then we're going to dive into looking at what goes on in the perimenopause and postmenopausally. Why do we notice at this time in our lives that our health might change slightly? Why do we notice that the food we eat maybe doesn't have the same effect on us anymore? Why do we see potentially changes in body composition that we really struggle to deal with? Why do we feel low? Why do we feel anxious? Why does our sleep pattern seem to go all over the place? Understanding a bit about the menopause and the perimenopause is really key to helping you then be able to see how your diet, the food that you eat, your lifestyle can have such a profoundly positive impact on things. So it's really good that we get to share this time together today. As I said, I'm Nicola Moore. I'm a registered nutritional therapist, ION trained, very proud of it. And I work one-to-one with clients, but also through my signature program, Liberate. One of my major passions in life is to teach women how to become friends with food. There's so much entrenched beliefs about diet culture and the right way to eat, the wrong way to eat, what we should be doing. I believe that by us understanding how our bodies work, which includes things like how our hormones work, how our gut works, how our immune system works, but also whether we notice if we're hungry, whether we understand if we're full, whether we understand what our relationship with food is like. We can learn all of the basics to do with how our body works and how we feel about ourselves and our relationship with food. Then we have actually the keys to be able to live a long, happy and healthy life away from diet culture and being able to choose our own right way to eat for us. You can find out more about me and my work on my website, which is www.nicola-moore.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at Nicola Moore Nutrition. But for today, let's dig into the menopause and what that really means and why nutrition is so crucial in this important life stage. Well, maybe you are facing the menopause at the moment. Maybe you're perimenopausal age. Maybe you're postmenopausal. Maybe you're just interested because there is so much information out there in the media at the moment about this subject. I welcome that information. It's really good that we're talking about it. But one of the things that worries me is that it becomes the new thing that we should start worrying about and looking for signs and symptoms and maybe becoming overly concerned with. It's really good to understand the basics, but this is part of life. This is an important life stage, and it spells freedom in so many ways for us. So we need to embrace this part of our lives. And if we understand how our body's working, then we can manipulate things in our body's chemistry to allow us to travel through this time of life feeling good, feeling healthy, and actually coming out the other side feeling empowered and ready for the second half of our lives. Maybe you or someone you know is experiencing things at the moment that could be attributed to the perimenopause or postmenopause stage in life. So maybe you're noticing changes in your body composition. It can be quite common at this life stage to experience that your weight starts to accumulate in different parts of the body, maybe more around the middle, the trunk area, as an example. Or you might find over this period of your life that where you used to not put on weight so easily, now you're putting on weight a little bit easier than you did before. Or where you used to be able to lose weight quite easily if you tried, now you're finding it hard. All of these things can happen during this life stage, and we're going to look at why that happens in a moment. The key to understanding it is why, and then you get to know what to do about it, which is wonderful. Another thing that I notice with women that I work with during this life stage is a change in emotional resilience during this part of life as well. Things can feel a lot more overwhelming. Anxiety can really come to the fore. Sleep problems and insomnia can really raise their head at this point in our lives as well. There's a lot that we can do with nutrition to actually help our brain chemistry to work more effectively. And that helps with so many other things, including actually our food choices and things like cravings and appetite. So the whole thing works together. There might be problems with memory that happen at this point in life. Often, this is more common in a perimenopause age. Studies show that postmenopausally, some of those memory problems actually resolve themselves postmenopausally. But this can be really, really challenging. And depending on our genetics and depending on how we use the food that we eat to make particular chemicals in the brain, that can really, really affect us. So when our hormone levels start to change in this point in life, these are the things that are really triggering these cascade of events with different things happening in how we feel and our health. There may just be an overall trend to those health niggles that you've put up with for years raising their heads and actually being more pronounced, more heightened. Or you might feel that because your resilience isn't what it was, that they're bothering you more. Let's take this and run with it, because you have the opportunity now to be able to make some fundamental changes. And I'm not talking about great big overnight massive changes either. This is about being kind and sensible and just not worrying about being perfect. It's just about being good enough. We've got an opportunity to be able to resolve the health niggles that we've had for years with a new element of resolve and a new steeliness to us. So there's a lot that can be done during this stage in life with our diet and lifestyle to really impact on all of this. But what I want us to do first of all is understand a little bit about what is actually happening during the perimenopause and postmenopause. If we understand a little bit about the physiology, then it's going to be easier to have those light bulb moments further down when we're looking at what's going on as a consequence and what we do about it. Now, during our reproductive years, where we're generally having a regular period every month, what's happening each month of those cycles is that we are having hormone changes happening in the body that allow each month for an egg cell in our ovaries that has been dormant since we were actually, before we were even born. So when we were growing inside our mum's tummies, we already had all of our egg cells already made and sitting, waiting to potentially become a baby at some point in our life. So each month, when we're in our reproductive years, one of those dormant egg cells is going to be picked up and it's going to be activated through hormone signaling to almost come to life and be ready to grow and develop and then be ovulated from the ovary. And when it's ovulated, then if fertilization happens, then we get pregnant, and that's when an embryo starts to develop. But in most cases, actually, what's happening each month is that we are having an egg cell become dominant, it's being ovulated, but then actually we don't get pregnant. And so the body has mechanisms in place to be able to pick up on signals that pregnancy hasn't happened. And at that point, that's what stimulates our period happening. So we have this cycle happening month after month after month. And what's involved as predominant hormones in these cycles each month is the hormones estrogen and progesterone. So these are considered hormones that are very much relevant to women and very much relevant to reproduction and our fertile years. However, estrogen and progesterone aren't just there to help us with getting pregnant and maintaining a pregnancy. We actually have receptors on cells all around the body for these different hormones, including our brain, including our immune system, our nervous system, and our gut, and our bones as well. So we're responding. Our whole body is actually under the influence of these hormones and other hormones, which are basically chemical messengers. Hormones are there to be created and to stimulate our cells to action, a particular job to happen. Now, during our reproductive years, what's happening in the first half of our month as that egg cell is becoming dominant, ready to be ovulated, the hormone estrogen tends to elevate. until it reaches such a point that it's high enough that it will tell the brain that the egg cell is fully developed and ready to be ovulated. At that point, a feedback mechanism is sent down, stimulates ovulation. And in the second half of our cycle each month, the other hormone, progesterone, tends to come up and flourish and be dominant, because it's the progesterone hormone that's the thing that's getting our uterus ready for potential implantation of a growing fetus if we do end up getting pregnant. So these two hormones are in flux during the month, but they are both in good levels. And so they're helping our whole body to feel good and healthy and well. Now, during the perimenopause, what happens is maybe the number of egg cells that we have is starting to decline. And so maybe each month we don't have stimulus to create ovulation. So what can happen from time to time during our perimenopausal years is actually ovulation and creation of egg cells actually declines from time to time. We might skip months where we don't ovulate, for example. And what is happening because of this process is that overall levels of progesterone tend to, over the perimenopal years, tend to see a decline. And estrogen hormones actually can go a little bit berserk. They can go a little bit peaky and trophy in a way that's greater and more pronounced than it would do in our regular reproductive and fertile years. Now, it's these changes in hormones that can create some of the symptoms that we experience. When we've travelled through our perimenopausal years and we're postmenopausal, and that's denounced by you having had a whole year without having a period at all, at that point you could be considered postmenopausal. You're not having those regular changes or productions in hormones happening from the ovaries anymore. And so the overall levels of both progesterone and estrogen drop right down. So we have reproductive years where they're up and down, but they're working as they should. We have perimenopausal years where things are going a little bit haywire. And then postmenopausally, we have a lower level overall of the hormones. Remember, these hormones are not just involved in our reproductive life. We have cell receptors for these hormones in our brain, in our immune system, in our guts. Our nervous system is reliant on them. And actually, these hormones do a lot of different jobs in the body, which is why we can feel quite rough during this period of our lives. The body is really interconnected. All of the hormones talk together, understand each other. The brain is governing everything that's happening. We have our nervous system interacting as well. So what's happening through our body all the time is that the brain knows what's going on everywhere. And actually, when you see one imbalance somewhere, you'll see another thing try and pick up the slack or be affected by that. And that's really what's happening in the perimenopause. So as a result, and your genetics are going to play a role in this, but also your diet and lifestyle and where you're at currently with your health is potentially going to play a part in this as well. Examples of what can happen with these changes of hormones are as follows. So we have another hormone called insulin. Insulin is a hormone that helps us to deal with glucose in the blood. We want to be able to keep our glucose levels stable in the blood. That allows us to be healthy and fit and well. And so insulin's job is to maintain that homeostasis, and it does it by dealing with excessive amounts of glucose or extra glucose that comes in when we've eaten something. It will help our cells to be able to pick up that blood glucose, take it into the cell, and ideally use it to make energy. Now, estrogen actually and insulin can work quite closely together. And for a lot of women, especially if they have a genetic predisposition, when estrogen levels start to decline and change, it can affect how well our cells are able to listen to insulin's message. So what can happen during this period of time is that we can actually find it harder to maintain blood glucose homeostasis, and the storage element of what insulin is doing is slightly altered. It can mean that actually we become more programmed to store our glucose as fat cells as fats in the cell, rather than using it so much for energy. So this is why you might see changes in body composition during perimenopause and postmenopausally. There's a difference in our metabolic functioning potentially, and that means that we might store fat maybe more around the middle. We may be more predisposed to some of the metabolic conditions, whether that's metabolic syndrome, but we can also see sometimes changes in our risk for cardiovascular disease and other things like that. So it's all coming from this element of physiology to do with how our body utilizes the glucose in the blood and either uses it, stores it, or whatever it does with it. Estrogen is playing a role there. So once we understand that, we can do things to actually help our cells to be able to respond to insulin better. There are things that we can do with our diet, things that we can consume, especially things like omega-3 fatty acids. They help our cell membranes to work efficiently from a listening potential when it comes to insulin. So if we're using the right fats in our diets and we're having a focus on things like omega-3 fats, then actually we're doing a good job of helping our body to potentially be able to listen to insulin's message better in lieu of having that estrogen that was there before. Estrogen and progesterone also help with cell signaling in the brain when it comes to dealing with the neurotransmitters that help us to feel good and happy. So those are serotonin and dopamine. Estrogen is linked with the working and the functioning and the response to the brain chemical serotonin. And progesterone, when there are good enough levels of progesterone and estrogen, progesterone is very helpful for us being able to listen to the message of dopamine. And so both of these brain chemicals are involved with how we feel emotionally, our resilience to stress, our ability to be happy, our ability to be optimistic, those sorts of things. So if we have changes in these hormones happening during the perimenopause and postmenopausally, it can be influential on how we feel emotionally. This shouldn't be underestimated. This is really, really significant for so many of us. Again, if we can help ourselves to be able to listen to the message of the brain chemicals better, that is a really good thing that we can do. So again, nutrition can help with cell messaging, especially again from an omega-3 fats point of view. However, we can also help our body to just manufacture these brain chemicals efficiently by putting in the right foods to manufacture them in the first place. And protein foods are going to be really helpful in this regard, in supporting how we actually manufacture our serotonin and dopamine and other neurochemicals in the first place. So putting in those raw materials is going to be really helpful. Now, what can be interesting during this time of life is if we're feeling a little less resilient emotionally, what that can actually lead us to do is feel more stress and have more stress and experience more stress. And if we're experiencing stress, actually, what we're then doing is we're more likely to be making more of a different sort of hormone called cortisol. Cortisol is a really important hormone, but actually, if we make lots of cortisol, then it can have some changes on our physiology. So if we're not feeling quite right, we may be feeling more stressed. As a consequence, we may produce more cortisol, and that's a stress hormone. So that will actually alter physiology over the longer term, again, to start programming how we store the food that we eat. So again, with slightly higher levels of cortisol, you may see more fat accumulation around the middle. So that compounded by the issue that we potentially have with insulin. So there's all of these different things that are happening in the body that are all playing their role in how it makes us feel. Now, cortisol is a hormone that also feeds into our circadian rhythm. Our circadian rhythm is basically our biological clock, our 24-hour biological clock, which, if working efficiently, allows us to wake up in the morning, allows us to usually have a lull around 3 p.m. when we might feel a bit sleepy. That's a normal circadian mechanism. And then again in the evening, feeling tired, and ideally then allowing us to go and have a restful sleep through the night. Cortisol is involved in the sleep-wake sequence because cortisol actually is a circadian hormone that starts to peak in the morning and allows us to be able to get up and then slow down and reduce in its levels in the evening, as another hormone and brain chemical called melatonin comes in to help us feel sleepy in the evening. So if we're having changes in what's going on with our cortisol level because we're feeling more stressed, because we have a bit more anxiety, because our brain chemicals are not working as efficiently as they were before, then potentially this can play into our overall circadian rhythm as well. And that can change our appetite. That can actually lead to us having more cravings for sweet foods the next day, which is really ironic because the mechanisms that we have in place, like the insulin, to help deal with maybe the carbohydrate, sweet, sugary elements that we're craving, those mechanisms to deal with that aren't working as efficiently as they were before. So you can see it can be like an almost ever decreasing cycle of events that's happening. Now, this can feel really depressing. I get that, but actually knowing it, what I find when I talk to clients about this is that it's just really powerful to have that awakening and to have that understanding. It means that there are then things that we can do to deal with it, because there really, really are things that you can do. I just want to finish before we move into looking at what you can do, a word on estrogen, if I can. Now, estrogen is this hormone that you'll hear a lot about, and it's a really important hormone. But it's also really quite a tricky customer. Estrogen is incredibly powerful. It's very potent. And as a result, our body treats it quite carefully. Our body likes to be able to manufacture estrogen, but then be able to process it, i.e., metabolize or detoxify it in a very particular way, and then have it help it be escorted out the body. Now, estrogen, when it's broken down or metabolized or detoxified, however you want to call it, whatever you want to say about it, when that process is happening, actually, estrogen's chemical structure alters slightly, and it can be driven down different pathways of this detoxification route. There are three potential pathways that estrogen can go down. All three of them are running in tandem, and depending on our genetics, but crucially, really, really depending on our nutrition, our lifestyle, our diet, those things are going to really influence which pathways our body prefers for estrogen. Now, this becomes really relevant for everything to do with female health, but also given the fact that during perimenopause and postmenopausally, it's shown that our risk of estrogen-related illnesses may go up. It's really, really important for us to understand this concept, because one of the pathways that estrogen can be steered down from a metabolic point of view is one that has been linked to the creation of problems with changes to DNA and links with some of the more estrogen-dependent cancers, or estrogen-linked cancers. So what we want to do is actually encourage as much steering of estrogen down a beneficial, positive pathway as possible. And actually, our body tends to favor that pathway anyway. But if we're not doing the right things with our diet and lifestyle, we're going to be more at risk of it going down a more troublesome pathway. Now, the key here is eating vegetables, but especially cruciferous vegetables. So that includes broccoli, cabbage, kale, Brussels sprouts, all of those sorts of things. They contain a wonderful, wonderful ingredient called indole 3-carbinol. And this has been shown to really help effectively move estrogen down this more protective pathway. So just eating your vegetables is going to be a really important thing for you to consider. Actually, I'd say for any woman, no matter the life stage, these are useful things to do. But other things that we can support this pathway is to manage our alcohol consumption, not have too much alcohol, manage our stress levels as best we can. So let's look at all of these other things we can help with that we've already covered in this talk today. And making sure that we have replete levels of specific nutrients in our diet, including B vitamins, magnesium, zinc. So a really lovely, healthy, balanced diet is going to give us those raw materials that we need, as well as the proteins for our brain chemistry, as well as things like the omega-3 fats for our brain chemistry as well. It's going to be really, really lovely thing for you to do for your body, and your body's going to really thank you for it. Nutrition really does pave the way. It is providing the raw materials that we need to function. And there are some nutrients that we get from food, some elements of nutrition that are considered essential. And by that, we mean our body can't make them. A lot of things our body can make, given it's got the right bits and pieces to use in the first place. But there are some parts of nutrition that we just cannot manufacture. We have to get it from our diet. And so they're referred to as essential. I've already spoken about one today. That's omega-3. That's an essential fatty acid. So omega-3 fats, which are found in really good levels in things like oily fish, but also in walnuts as well, and flax seeds. So we have to think and work sometimes to get these foods into the diet. The omega-3 fats are essential. So we do need to think about how we're going to obtain them from the diet. And also some of the elements of protein. Protein is broken down into things called amino acids, and these are like little building blocks, so almost like little Lego pieces that can be built up and broken back down into lots of different things. Remember, our brain chemistry is reliant on amino acids, specific amino acids, to help make things like the serotonin and dopamine. And some of those amino acids are also essential. So we can't manufacture them. We have to get them in from our diet. So this is why thinking about food in this way and thinking about the vitamins and minerals that work as cofactors. So they basically elicit chemistry in your cell. That's what these vitamins and minerals do. They're cofactors that make chemistry happen. And the better our chemistry works, the better we feel, the better our body performs, and the better we're able to travel through life without feeling unwell and without feeling sad and without feeling like we're putting on weight and we can't do anything about it. So we really have to think about this as sort of like a key area of our lives to focus on. Now, sometimes what can happen during this life stage is if you notice that you're putting on weight and the old ways of managing your weight aren't working like they did before, it makes absolute sense, and I can really understand why it might feel tempting to really, really restrict eating more and more and more in order to try and lose weight. But I really want to say that that's been shown to be really quite unhelpful, ironically, for helping you reach your body composition and weight management targets. So what studies show us is that the more we actually restrict food, the more likely we are to actually end up overindulging, whether it's that day or a few days later or weeks later or whatever. On balance, restriction has been shown time and time again to be pretty ineffective when it comes to managing weight overall. So we really want to think about what we can do instead. We want to be able to find a place of eating where we're eating and engaging with food, where we have a nice relationship with food, we're mindful about it, and actually where we can learn to observe and identify whether we are actually feeling hungry in the first place and when we're feeling full. Sometimes what's happening is that we're propelled to eat, maybe because of our physiology. So maybe because our sleep is all over the place, our cortisol levels are a little bit all over the place. And as a result, we're being driven to eat comforting, sugary, fatty, salty foods. So we can be propelled from a physiological point of view, or maybe because our insulin isn't working as effectively, we're having ups and downs in blood sugar peaks and troughs. So we're trying to help our energy by having quick fix solutions with sugary, caffeinated drinks or foods that keep us going but give us an up and down element. And that can propel us to eat. But we can also eat because we are just what I would call mouth hungry and not genuinely stomach hungry, which is when you're actually digestively hungry, which usually happens a few hours after you've eaten something. You can experience it by having a feeling of an empty stomach. You might hear gurgling. You look at your watch, it has been a few hours since you've eaten. That is true stomach hunger. I wonder how often you get to the point of having that. For a lot of people, we don't really get to that point. We're eating because we have food on hand, we fancy something. And emotional eating is an area we don't have time to get into today, but I'd encourage you to look at my website and find out more about my Liberate Programme if you want to sort of uncover more from that perspective, because we can often eat because we're just bored, or we're lonely, or we're happy and we're celebrating. But it's that kind of eating, and it's eating when we're not engaging with food, we're not engaging with our body. That's more likely to contribute to some of these changes in body composition rather than us restricting. We want to get to a place where we're eating 3 nice balanced meals a day that are filling, that are satisfying, where we feel nice and full. I'd refer to it as feeling settled and secure after eating. And when we've done that, actually, we're able to travel for a few hours. Then we get nicely hungry again. We have something to eat, and that. That's how the continuum goes on. Actually, dietary patterns like that over a period of sustained time. So again, it's not about quick fixes. It's about maybe having a nice 6-month project for yourself. Those sustained patterns of eating behavior has been shown to be incredibly efficient for bringing around a really nice, healthy body composition. And when you're choosing foods to eat that are really vibrant and tasty, and rich in the lovely proteins, rich in the natural fats, and rich in the fibers from the plant kingdom foods, you're providing the nutrition to help everything we've talked about work more efficiently without you even trying. So it's something to think about. So we really want to think about balancing our plate with an element of protein, natural fats, and plant kingdom foods. So protein really, useful sources of protein do come from animal kingdom foods. So animal kingdom foods are going to actually give us a really nice amount of those essential amino acids. So this is something to consider: meat, fish, eggs, poultry, game, fish, shellfish, all of those sorts of things. Dairy as well. These are foods that are actually quite useful and considered complete protein sources. But you can absolutely get good protein sources from vegetarian or vegan sources as well. So whether that's nuts and seeds, whole grains as well, lentils, beans, and all of that. Now, to get complete amounts of protein, you need to consider the balance of different sorts of vegetable protein that you're eating, because it's actually having a mixture that's really important for ensuring you get those complete amino acids in. But focusing and having those front and center of your mind is probably going to be quite a helpful thing to do. Asking yourself the question, when you put a meal together, or even when you're making yourself a sandwich or whatever you're doing, asking yourself the question, where is my protein coming from? When I've looked at food diaries of people, and I've worked with over 1,000 people, I've been in this profession for over 20 years now, I see that protein can quite easily just not feature quite as predominantly as possibly it could be. And with every decade of our life, actually our requirement for protein tends to go up, and our ability to be able to digest and absorb protein goes down. So we really do, in this life stage, need to think about protein as being one of our big key players when we're thinking about what we're going to eat over the course of a day. So thinking about your protein is going to be really helpful. Natural fats are really helpful as well. Fats help us to feel full and satisfied. They give taste and food a mouthfeel that's satisfying. Feeling full is not just about what goes into our stomach. It's about all of the brain chemicals that are happening, including what's happening in our mouth when we actually including what happens before we start eating. All of this is very, very relevant for the signaling processes of the body. Chewing is actually important for our feelings of hunger and fullness as well. So fats are really useful for that satiated feeling from eating. Now, fats, I think it's about the balance, but if you're eating lovely animal kingdom foods and lovely foods like nuts and seeds and all of that, you're going to be getting some nice natural fats coming into your diet. Olive oil is well known for its amazing health benefits and its impact on longevity. So using these lovely oils and fats in your diet is going to be very, very supportive for giving you an experience of eating that is not just nourishing nutritionally, but nourishing almost for your soul, so that you feel nice and full and settled and secure from eating. So focusing on having some fats on your plate or in your meal or over the course of your day is going to be a really helpful thing for you. And then really championing vegetables and plant kingdom foods as an absolute hero is going to be an important thing to consider. And if you're a volume eater, if you enjoy eating and you feel that you need to eat a lot to feel satisfied, then using vegetables and salad items can be wonderful. And there are so many different ways in which you can make these really tasty. Different ways of cooking, whether it's roasting, whether it's air frying, whether it's steaming, whether it's cooking it, poaching in water, whatever you want to do. There are lots of different ways in which you can cook vegetables. There's lots of different ways in which you can flavour them, whether it's adding oils, whether it's adding a little bit of butter, salt and pepper. You can add fresh herbs, whether you're adding lemon zest. There's all different ways in which you can bring vegetables to life. And one of the amazing things that's happened over the last recent years in the world of nutrition is this wonderful explosion of amazing people who have written cookery books that are just really showing the value and the exciting things that you can do with making plant-based eating a really, really joyful celebration of food. So weaving those elements in and learning to love food and learning to love your plant kingdom foods is going to be really, really helpful for you. Now, perimenopausally and postmenopausally, remember, depending on your genetics and all of that stuff, your body's response to insulin may slightly differ. Your metabolism overall might change. And as a result of this, it does stand to reason that eating food and how your body utilizes that food is likely to be different to what it was when you're in your 20s. And I think that's just something we have to accept. There's a way in which we can think about balancing our plate in order to try and mitigate some of that. If having a nice body composition in terms of making sure that we're working on reducing like more of that weight around the middle area that's been shown to not be so helpful for long-term health outcomes. If we want to manage that, then looking at the composition of the food that you're having on the plate could be really helpful here. And really, this comes down to the carbohydrate element of a meal, or more of the starchy carbohydrate element of the meal. So whether that's things like pasta or potatoes or rice, those sorts of things. Now, I'm not going to say to you don't have them, because actually for many women, taking those foods out is like pulling the rug out from under you. And actually, we need those foods in large amounts, to some extent, I should say, in order to really help our brain chemistry work well, and for us to feel satisfied, and for us to not be falling into this risky restriction pattern of eating. So carbohydrates are definitely our friends, but we maybe don't need to have as much of them as we used to. We may need to get just as much value from having a little bit less during this stage of our life. So all of those sorts of more starchy carbohydrates, like the pasta, like the potatoes, like the rice, enjoy them, but be thinking to yourself in terms of percentage, if I was to break this up into a plate, maybe I want to have a smaller part of that plate. Maybe it wants to be just under a quarter, not even a quarter, less than a quarter of my plate coming from those sorts of things. And I actually want a slightly higher proportion of that of protein. So if I'm looking at the ratios, I probably want to favor a little bit more protein than those starchy carbohydrates. And I really also want to focus on at least half of my plate coming from foods from the plant kingdom that I would say grow above the ground. So those above the ground vegetables are going to be wonderful, especially those green leafy vegetables. And remember, the cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, again, really, really incredibly helpful. Now, if you can balance your plate in that way, and you're not, it's difficult to do this all the time, but just having this as a notion, having this as a sort of rule of thumb in the back of your mind, especially if there's 1 or 2 meals a day where you really can focus on making food and what you're thinking about from that point of view, then this could be a really useful exercise for you to experiment with to see if over time it helps with your body composition, as well as focusing on your omega-3 fats, your other nutrition coming in from all of the things that we've talked about, and helping yourself to manage your stress as well. So in terms of thinking of an overall strategy, if you want to think, okay, what are my key landmark things that I want to focus on in this life stage from a nutrition perspective to allow me to feel as good as I can, to have good energy, to be able to improve my sleep, to improve my emotional well-being, to improve my body composition, and to help my longevity, to help my overall long-term health prospects. These are my sort of, areas that I think are really worth focusing on. So number 1, I would say about eating regular meals, 3 regular meals a day that allow you to feel full afterwards. And where you can, just reduce the snacking in between. And in order to do that, that might be about looking at your overall physiology, some of those driving patterns that I spoke about earlier that can lead us to eat, but also really taking on and considering what your relationship with food is and sometimes why you're eating, and taking ownership of finding ways to learn about your own natural hunger and fullness could be a really powerful thing for you to do. And the cumulative benefits of this over time can be profound, I promise you. So eat until you're nicely full, not stuffed, not overly full, but definitely not left wanting for more. We really want to know that we've had a nice meal and feel settled and secure. Make vegetables the hero of your meal. So rather than having your vegetables on the side, really think about your meals being a celebration of vegetables, and just pick the ones that you like. And for ones that you don't like so much, maybe look at becoming engaged with exploring different ways in which you can cook them or treat them in order to bring new flavors to the table. Engage with food as much as you can. Investigate what mindful eating is and how you can really connect with food in a way that gives you actually pockets of happiness in your day, something to look forward to, something to really focus on from a positive perspective. Really enjoy your broccoli, and all other cruciferous vegetables are going to really help you manage your estrogen effectively. Also, I would say consider your alcohol and caffeine consumption, because both of these 2 things are going to play a role in disrupting your overall circadian rhythm, which could influence your hunger and your fullness and your cravings situation that may be going on, but also your overall energy patterns and the health of your digestive system and your gut. I wish that I could talk to you about your gut. There is so much we could discuss, but these are the main things that I think would be helpful for you. So considering what's going on with caffeine and alcohol could be transformative for you. It really could. Move your body. Make sure, if you can, that you're finding ways to help the muscle mass of your body to be as strong as it can be. We want to have more muscle mass than fat mass, ideally. And that's done by doing exercise that challenges your muscles. So whether that's body weight exercises or using weights at the gym, making sure that you're walking, making sure that you're taking the stairs, all of those things where you're using your body and moving your body is going to be helpful. It will help improve something called your overall basal metabolic rate, which is the rate at which your body operates even when you're doing nothing. And having good muscle mass in this life stage is going to be really, really helpful for your overall metabolism for years to come. And I would say as well, where you can, prioritize sleep. Take sleep seriously. I do know what it's like in the evening thinking, it's my downtime now. I'm just going to, I don't want to go to bed because I just want to be able to relax. But actually making your evening something that involves going to bed at a reasonable time and taking sleep seriously is going to be one of the very best things that you can do for your overall longevity. It really is like the secret weapon in all of this. So if sleep is a problem for you, managing your alcohol, managing your caffeine, getting those proteins into your diet, and looking at your essential amino acid, your essential fatty acids, and all of that, all of these things that we've spoken about, hopefully will go some way to helping you with your sleep overall. And I'd also say maybe also prioritize things that make you laugh. When we laugh, we engage something called the parasympathetic nervous system, which overall helps to keep us calm and balanced. It also helps our digestive system work well, which means that all this lovely food we're eating is actually processed as effectively as it can be, and we reap the benefits of it. So again, don't underestimate the value of laughter. Maybe hanging out with the people that make you laugh, watching funny things on television over things that might stress you out. It sounds tame, but actually it can be potent and powerful to your overall health and well-being. Well, I hope that was helpful for you. It's been really lovely spending this time with you. And I hope that you see this life stage as something where you have the opportunity to really make the best of it and really look forward to the second half of your life in a really, really positive way. If you want to find out more about my work, you can find me at www.nicola-moore.com, or I'm on Instagram at Nicola Moore Nutrition as well. And I wish you all the very best and good luck.
If you enjoyed this presentation, then click on the link in the description to subscribe to our Nutrition Talks email list. And don't forget to click the like button and subscribe.